Oblivion, also titled the Void of Oblivion, the Planes of Oblivion, and the Waters of Oblivion, is a dark realm located within the Orbis, the chaos and cosmos that was formed by Anu and Padme. This realm is mainly inhabited by the Daedra, the Et Ada beings who did not devote their essence to the conception of Mundus and Nirn. Oblivion is often used synonymously with the Planes of Oblivion. The Daedric Princes created their individual realms of Oblivion out of their essence, likely in ridicule of the Mundus. The Daedric Princes each have their own planes, with at least 16 major ones. However, there are over 37,000 recorded planes, including that of Chaos Realms and Pocket Realms as well. Although there are far more than merely 37,000, there exists far more than what meets the eye. Most of these smaller planes of Oblivion are ruled over by the collective will of an array of greater and lesser Daedra, although some of these planes are ruled over by mortals who have achieved immortality in one way, shape, or form, such as the Ideal Masters. The realms of the Daedric Princes can be incredibly vast and chaotic in nature, and very little is known about some more than others. While most of the majority of the realms are created by the Daedra who took no part in the conception of Mundus, there are others, namely the Colored Rooms of Meridia and Ashpit of Malakath, that were concepted by beings who are considered Daedra, who only later became so. Meridia's plane was deliberately constructed by her because she had become trapped, while the manner of which and reason for the conception of Ashpit is not known, although it is likely that it was crafted as a kind of prison for Malakath. There are 16 planes that are devoted to their respective princes as follows: Apocrypha, Hermaeus Mora's realm; Ashpit, Malakath's realm; Cold Harbor, Molag Bal's realm; the Colored Rooms, Meridia's realm; the Deadlands, Mehrunes Dagon's realm; the Evergloam, Nocturnal's realm; the Fields of Regret, Clavicus Vile's realm; the Hunting Grounds, Hircine's realm; Moonshadow, Azura's realm; the Myriad Realms of Revelry, Sanguine's realms; the Pits, Periite's realm; Quagmire, Vermina's realm; Attribution Share, Boethia's realm; the Scuttling Void, Namira's realm; the Shivering Isles, Sheogorath's realm; and the Spiral Skyne, Mephalah's realm. Each plane is quite different from another, although some share many similarities. Each plane typically encompasses the sphere and personality of its prince. They can be anything between beautiful, dangerous, chaotic, dark, depressing, ruined, and some realms are far too complex for the understanding of mortals. Oblivion is viewed as the opposite of Aetherius, the idealistic afterlife for mortals. Most planes known to Tamriel scholars have been traveled to at least once. However, the Planes of Oblivion are really just different realms located in one much larger realm, and this entire realm is incredibly dangerous and nearly inhospitable for mortals. The only way to access Oblivion from Nirn is typically through the use of Oblivion Gates, either created by a Daedric prince such as the Ebonmare, or the Oblivion Gates that spawn during the Oblivion Crisis, for example. But Oblivion can be accessed from incredibly powerful magic, and individuals who possess the arcane knowledge or technology on how to construct their own portal to Oblivion, typically through the use of magic inspired by the Daedra themselves, such as Valerica of the Volkihar vampire clan, who accessed a portal to a plane of Oblivion, the Soul Cairn, in her study. Navigation between Oblivion and Nirn is only achievable at specific locations, although most of these are seated in quite dangerous areas. There have been a small number of man-made spaces to expedite navigation between Oblivion and Nirn, typically crafting transitional spaces between Mundus and Oblivion to make transit much more easier. These places are known as slipstream realms. The most distinguished of these slipstream realms is the Battlespire, utilized to tutor and educate Imperial battle mages. Transit to Oblivion is also achievable through the use of sigil stones. During the Oblivion Crisis, the hero of Cyrodiil had entered numerous Oblivion Gates, and successfully closed them by removing the sigil stone that was located at the top of the looming towers in the plain of Mehrunes Dagon, the Deadlands. Afterwards, the hero was safely teleported back to Tamriel. As mentioned by the runes in Daedric script written in the Mysterium Xarxes, a powerful book written by Mehrunes Dagon himself, mortals can access Oblivion with the use of a Daedric artifact and the blood of an Daedric being. During the Oblivion Crisis, Martin Septim, the last of the Septim dynasty, utilized his expertise in Daedric arts to carry out the ritual with a Daedric artifact and the scattered blood of Tiber Septim himself left on his breastplate armor. In the manuscripts of Morian Xenos' apprentice, Saif Ij Hija, the mage was able to enter a deep meditative trance-like state of being in which he could mentally and safely traverse the planes of Oblivion without the use of his physical body being present there. The documents also stated that the Psijic Order and the Dwemer also possessed incredibly powerful telepathic magics that granted them the ability to communicate with beings who dwelled in Oblivion, and astral project themselves there in Oblivion as well. Namely, the Psijics knew of a place titled the Dreaming Cave, where travel to Oblivion was made convenient, without use of a gate of some sort. Iachesis, Sothasil, Nemetai, Morian Xenos himself, and many other individuals entered the Veil and traversed the realms of Oblivion utilizing the Dreaming Cave. Nearly all planes of Oblivion are dominated over or managed by one of the Daedric Princes, hence the plane typically takes a reflective landscape of that Daedric Prince's personality. The inhabitants of these planes are all jointly invoked to as Daedra, and are typically generated at the inclination of the prince who constructed the realm itself. Daedra are not mortal, but can be slain. However, if they are slain, their soul, if not trapped beforehand, is sent to what is called their animus, the waters of Oblivion, to be soon reconstructed into a new form. Planes not associated with any prince are usually referred to as pocket realms or pocket dimensions, but these terms can also actually refer to more minor realms associated to a prince as well. Oblivion is viewable from the surface of Nirn, and mortals perceive Oblivion as a vast black void of space, viewing it as an empty vacuum that is the night sky. In the Second Era, Molag Bal pursued to assimilate his plane of Oblivion, Cold Harbor, with Mundus, in a crisis known as the Plane Meld. At the end of the Third Era, Mehrunes Dagon had also attempted to come fully into Mundus, in an endeavor to conquer Tamriel for himself, releasing Oblivion gates between Mundus and Oblivion to reinforce his breach. At one moment during the Oblivion Crisis, the concept is put on the table that Tamriel, or rather Nirn itself, is a plane of Oblivion. This belief branches from a mixture of calculated deception of the segment of the speaker, and a general misinterpretation of how the universe is illustrated. Nirn is the plane of existence that is fixed to Lorcan. Much like the other planets are those planes fixed to the divines, though very little is understood about these planets. It is legitimate that Nirn is just another realm of existence, similar to the realms and planes of Oblivion. However, by rationale, Oblivion rules out those planes fixed to Daedra, in which Nirn was in fact created collectively by Daedric beings, although Lorcan is disputed to be the most padomaic of these Daedric beings who took part in the conception of it. On the other hand, the complementary belief that Nirn was somehow stolen from the Daedric Princes by Lorcan or its inhabitants does not make much sense. Nirn exists only as an outcome of Lorcan's existence, and the mortals who populate it were conceived specifically to reside there. Mostly the planes of Oblivion are isolated and remote, metaphysically comparative to Nirn. While it is substantially achievable for inhabitants of particular realms to traverse to Nirn, and for mortals to traverse to particular planes of Oblivion, it is immensely difficult. Notably, the princes themselves are typically barricaded from infiltrating Nirn. However, they appear to have no issue passing between other planes of Oblivion. The easiest means of crossing the barrier between Oblivion and Nirn is by conjuration magic. This grants a mage the ability to, on Nirn, to conjure a Daedra from one of the Oblivion planes and shackle it to their will, only for a length of time. In some circumstances, the Daedra physically manifests on Nirn. In other cases, the Daedra's soul is restrained onto an item, such as armor or a weapon, for use by the conjurer. Seldomly, an incredibly mighty mage or wizard can permanently shackle a Daedra to an enchanted item, but usually the item dissolves once the Daedra's conjuration terminates. In addition, the Daedric Princes can, in some circumstances, summon a mortal to their realm. This handles much as the same way as with conjuring Daedra and Nirn. If a mortal is summoned physically to an Oblivion plane, they can be killed just like they would on Nirn. If they are summoned into the realm in a more spiritual sense, it typically compromises their body enduring on Nirn, and their death is no more permanent than the death of a conjured Daedra. In the early years of Tamriel's history, Daedric Princes frequently manifested on Nirn. Some Daedric Princes played decisive parts in the creation of the early races of Man and Mer. Azura was liable for coaching the Chimera on how to be distinct from the Altmer. She also was told to be responsible for crafting the Khajiit, likely from the Bosmer. Boethia was likely indirectly accountable for creating the Orsimer after consuming Trinimac. Near the beginning of the First Era, after the Ayleid slave wars had ended, the Aedra made a contract with Alesia to prevent the Daedra from manifesting on Nirn, and they were able to construct magical barriers that kept the Daedra out of Nirn, unless conjured by someone intentionally. After this, only few disclosed locations existed where mortals could traverse freely to Oblivion, and the Daedric Princes were only able to correspond with their followers through their constructed shrines and never in person. After the Oblivion Crisis, however, the united blood of Martin Septim and Akatosh intensified the barriers, so now the dragonfires are not required to be lit to keep the barriers unharmed. Many accepted that this would permanently detach Oblivion from Nirn, as a shrine or a mortal summoning is required to communicate with the Daedra. During the Fourth Era, 200 years after the Oblivion Crisis, the barriers are seemingly weaker. Daedric Princes and other powerful Daedra were physically manifesting on Nirn. Some were able to achieve this via a portal of sorts, such as Nocturnal and the Ebonmere. Some more powerful Daedra, such as Clavicus Vile's dog Barbas, were able to manifest and reside on Nirn. Hermaeus Mora was able to exhibit himself through a black book, and even Sanguine himself manifested under a mortal disguise.